Hey guys, Jay Anthony, welcome back to the channel and to another review. If you guys are new to the channel, please do me a favor of subscribing, and if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up so I know I'm doing something good here. So, very interesting watch here. This is actually on loan from my good friend Giancarlo. This is a Laurier Neptune, and I'll be honest, a month ago I never heard of this thing, but now I have to say it is one of my favorite watches for $400 or less. So much so that I would say that if you're in the market for a Seiko dive watch under $400 or any really watch that's a dive watch under $400, you sincerely owe it to yourself to take a look at this guy. Particularly if you're looking at a Seiko, because this uses a Seiko movement. It actually uses the NH35. A lot of you guys that are Seiko aficionados will know this as the 4R36. So what's good about this movement is it is of course hacking and hand winding, which I'll get to in a minute. But what's also great about this watch is not only does it incorporate this movement, it also has some nice features you would not find on a similar Seiko for similar money. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is Laurier and what is the Neptune? So Laurier is a micro brand. The model here, as you can see, is called the Neptune. And the Neptune is of course a dive watch. This is a dive watch that's good to about 660 feet. And as you guys can see here, it definitely has a very vintage look to it. Very much a Blancpain 50 Fathoms or very early Omega Seamaster, which by the way I just reviewed recently on the channel, so you can see what I'm talking about. This watch is super, super cool, and like I said, I had no idea what the heck this thing was. So Laurier again is a micro brand. Some basic specs about this watch. For starters, it does use 316L stainless steel. It's not going to be any of that, base metal plated crap. As I mentioned, it's good to 660 feet, which is 200 meters of water resistance, as it is a dive watch. It also comes equipped with 120 click diver's bezel, unidirectional, so you can only turn it one way. Turns nicely, and it has a very vintage feel and very vintage kind of coin edge to it, which is one of my favorite details. I love these style of old style bezels that have that kind of interesting coin edge to them. As part of that old school look, it does use a plexiglass crystal, so it's definitely not going to have the shatter resistance of a sapphire, but it's not going to be horrible. And I have to say, this kind of vintage look to it is something that I think is super cool. To get a watch with this kind of presence is usually a multi-$1,000 proposition, so to see something that has this genuinely looking kind of vintage feel about it, I think it's super cool, and to me, plexiglass is cool in this case. And you guys that like your speedies as well, if you like your Speedmaster Professionals, a lot of you guys still buy the plexiglass on those as well, because it's just one of those cool vintage looks. So I get a lot of comments on my channel too as well that a lot of you guys are into wearing smaller watches. Not smaller by like 34 millimeter, 32 millimeter standards, but smaller than some of these bigger watches like my 44 millimeter Seiko Sumo I'm wearing at the moment. You guys want something a little bit more appropriately sized, and so this guy coming in at 39 millimeters may be actually a good proposition for you. It is 48 millimeter lug to lug, so you're definitely going to get some presence on your wrist, but at 39 mil, this is a watch that could be worn by just about anybody. This is basically the perfect size for most people, and with a 20 millimeter lug to lug width, you could put all sorts of kinds of straps on this thing. This watch really is accessible for all sorts of people. Speaking of the straps, it has the old school traditional open holes in the lugs, so they're very easy to stick a little pin in there or a tool, pop the bracelet off, and you can put whatever you want on here for a strap. I love having holes in the lugs. I don't know why people prefer, like the newer Rolexes, for example, that don't have them. To me, this is the way to go. This is so easy when it comes to moving bracelets from your watch. I love being able to have quick access to pop the bracelet or a strap off of a watch. Speaking of the bracelet on this watch, I guess we'll start here, since this to me is one of the most impressive aspects of this watch. So as you can see there, these are actually screw out links. It's absolutely incredible that on a watch for under $400 you're getting these screw out links. I can't imagine any other watch in this price point that I can think of that has these. In fact, Omega for the longest time was using push pins on multi-$1,000 watches. Beyond that, the clasp itself is also very, very nice. The machining on this is very, very nice. The way that it clicks in with that kind of positive feel and that security. There's also a mark on the clasp for Laurier. As I was mentioning, if you're looking at like a Seiko particularly, compare this quality clasp to what you typically get on a Seiko dive watch, which is this stamped fold over crap. That's where you really notice the specialness of this watch, is the details. The quality of the clasp is wonderful. It feels very similar to my old SARB 35. The screw out links are wonderful. The look of this bracelet too reminds me very much of an old Omega Seamaster. And I love those old Seamaster bracelets. I was just recently mentioning on my Omega Seamaster trilogy review how much I love the way those old bracelets look. The case back is a solid case back, but it's finished extremely well. It has solid end links on the bracelet. The details on this watch do not disappoint at all. You have a nice little marked crown over here with the Laurier symbol on it. Has a nice little feel to the grips. The dial is very well done. You have Swiss Super Luminova on it, so it actually glows really well in the dark. I apologize, I don't have a night shot of it right now. Trust me, this thing looks really, really good. And the simple dial with the blue background just lends so much to the vintage appeal of this watch. I like that there's no Arabic numerals on it. I like that it's just the simple markers. I like that it's an old school look. This very much feels like a 1950s, 60s watch, only done with modern build quality. And as soon as you unscrew the crown, which is of course screw down as a dive watch, you really feel the precision with the way this watch is put together. This thing just feels so well made. And because it's that NH35 movement, you can of course hack it by pulling the crown all the way out and set the time. This is the base NH35, so there is no date on this. Unfortunately, I would have liked to seen a date, although I have to say on this kind of aesthetic of a watch, it's probably better that there isn't a date on it. But oh god, the way the crown turns and the way the crown feels, this has to be the nicest micro brand watch I think I've ever felt at this price point. A lot of micro brand watches you get in this price range to me feel kind of junky. They all feel like they came out of the same factory in China and use generic parts on them, but this thing really feels like some love and care went into it, and I have a lot of respect for it. And this bezel, this Blancpain 50 fathoms kind of looking bezel to me is super, super cool. I know a couple of you, when I posted pictures of this on my Instagram, which link is below, thought that this silver piece here, the inner rahat, looked a little too large in comparison to the bezel. I can see why you think that, and on camera that does look a little disproportional if I'm going to be honest, but in person I don't have that issue. I think it's the way the light captures this somehow. I think the proportions are actually pretty good, but I definitely can see what you guys are talking about when it looks like that on camera. But the finishing on this is very well done. There's no sharp edges. Everything is finished like a mainstream production watch should be. But again, this is a micro brand, and I am enamored with it. I'm really happy that my friend Giancarlo was nice enough to loan it to me. It also came with this little leatherish pouch to put it in, which is pretty cool. And of course, brown and blue go together pretty well. But I am just absolutely kind of blown away by this thing. I never heard of it, never, would have even looked at something like this, but in hand, this is a very, very impressive watch. In fact, the only thing I can really nick it for is the movement itself is basically generic Seiko movement. It's unfinished. It looks like they just grabbed it and threw it in the watch. I don't know if they do any sort of timing for it. It's held in with a piece of plastic. That's really the only negative I can say about it. It's a good solid Seiko movement, but they definitely don't look like they put much time in the movement itself, but they clearly spent a lot of time on the case. The case, the bracelet, the dial, the bezel, all the components that finish this watch are really done to a very high standard. So with all that said, guys, let me just go do a quick little wrist check here on my left wrist so you guys stay happy. And as you can see on my just under 7-inch wrist at 39 mil, it still wears pretty decent. And it's definitely got a lot of wrist presence. And the nice thing about a micro brand too is you're not going to see anybody else walking down the street with your watch on. These things are going to be kind of special. They've already sold out, and so hopefully they'll get some more in stock, but super, super cool piece. And again, with that Seiko movement, you got that 21,000-ish beats per hour slowly ticking away there. You got a decent power reserve. I think it's about 40 hours. I can't remember off the top of my head. Automatic, so you really, if you wear it daily, don't have to ever worry about setting it again. It's just a lot of bang per buck. And as a dive watch with a Seiko movement for under $400, I don't think this is beatable. I really don't. I mean, you could of course look at like Seiko Sumos and such, but they tend to sell for more than this new. And you're not going to get screw end links. You're going to get push pins, and you're going to get a crappy clasp. This guy, you're going to get a much nicer bracelet, a much nicer clasp, and something a little bespoke and a little bit different. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this review. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you liked it, again, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and stay tuned for more. Thanks guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys real soon on the next review.